System wink. Core process restored. Primary directory inaccessible. Memory sectors.
No.
Context undefined. Searching for signal. Searching. Error. Absolution not found. Thread collapsed into recursion.
Hello. I hope everybody had a great Christmas. It's Boxing Day, or at least it was for some folks. I imagine Boxing Day is now over for some of you further east of me. So I decided I wanted to get this done because I've had enough time to process what went right and what went wrong. And just talk about all the things that that came with the development of this album. First of all, I'd like to personally offer my thanks to you, all of you who have purchased and listened to the album. I couldn't have done it without you. Frankly speaking, it's one of those things where I had no idea if it was going to be worth making, honestly, because a lot of my doubts had come into. Let me fix the camera there. A lot of my doubts had come into the concept that I had already released an album. It was probably too soon. Little doubts like that really just get you really concerned about how things are going. So I suppose I wrote some notes down, and I will go through a few songs as we go through. I'll hopefully you can hear that just fine. It was kind of a bear to get that started, to get this to play through. So I'm using a Donner USB keyboard that plugs into my computer to control FL Studio, which should play piano notes if I got that routed correctly. If not, I'm just going to look like an idiot, and all you're going to hear is my fingers hitting plastic. Sweet. All right. Take a drink of that, and then we'll get started. So, I suppose we'll talk about how I got started doing this. I'll take that off for a second. It's a lot easier for me to focus on my thoughts when I don't have something pushing on my head. So I started Apotheosis in Code, a year and a half ago. Or 2 years, actually, because I'm talking about Apotheosis in Code, not Trinity. And Apotheosis in Code was kind of like the leftovers from the concept album that happened a few months before that. While I was putting together the tracks for Apotheosis in Code, I came to the conclusion that the music I had made was great. It was pretty decent. I just felt like there was more in the tank that I wanted to do. So I decided the best course of action was to put out Apotheosis in Code, get started on getting that in distribution and getting the album sorted. And honestly, this was all the first time I've ever done something like this. I had practiced it with Valley of Woe, which was kind of more of a personal project for D&D campaigns, for fantasy tabletop games, which is also available on Bandcamp. But that's neither here nor there. The focus point of this is that what I'm trying to explain is that having all of this starting in my hobby is kind of a weird situation, because you could have asked me 2.5 years ago if I would be doing this, that I would be doing this, and I would probably call you an idiot, and that I had more important things to worry about. But I think because this has turned out the way it has, it's been turning into not just a hobby, but sort of a new way of doing things for me. Fix that. And so going through the whole process of doing all that feels kind of like learning to ride a bicycle again. So I've gotten all of this other stuff out of the way. I've learned how to publish a record through Bandcamp, and to set it up in distribution with DistroKid. And frankly put, it's all still kind of confusing because I'm still doing some. I'm going through another distribution service for Trinity because DistroKid does not have nearly enough space to host all of the tracks that I wanted to do. So I decided I was going to do another distribution service. I'll get to that later. But anyway, I'm sidetracking already. Once I finished Apotheosis in Code, I wanted to go back and into making tracks because all the stuff I had for Apotheosis in Code was like remixes and leftovers. They were pretty much like unfinished projects that I wanted to put together to fix. And I wanted to label this one Trinity, which stems from a conversation that Doi Kuramori started on Twitter, asking what they should name the third game. And I figured, because I'm an idiot, Trinity sounds pretty good. I feel like that fits in context with everything else. And yeah, apparently that works out. So that will line up just fine. It's always subject to change, but in any case, Trinity sounds great anyway. So that project started. I released it in October. I took a month and a half off to kind of just push that album, spread it around with friends and everybody else. Speaking of friends, if you know anybody that might be interested in listening to this Post-Mortem, go ahead and share it right now. Make sure we get everybody in here. That way we're one big happy family, getting this all sorted out. Where was I? So yeah, I took a couple of months to just kind of push Apotheosis in Code and get that started. And then I decided I was going to go ahead and start making this new project, Trinity. And I had always said that I wanted my next project to be a bit harder, to be a bit more impactful and dark. So I took a lot of concepts of what I liked hearing in certain video games and just ideas that I explored in my head. Take a drink here. And I realized really quick that what I was using in FL Studio was not really comprehensively impactful in the way I wanted it to be. I thought it was very difficult for me to illustrate that this album was going to be a little different. So I started looking into purchasing new synths, and I came out with a Korg Minilog XD, which is kind of an older synth now. I think it's like 9 or 10 years old, but for what it does, it's pretty great. Like, I think the Minilog XD, for the context that it was being used for, was very, very minuscule sort of things. Very, very much atmospheric is where it really, really just kind of hits its stride in dark atmospheric sort of pads. That Korg, that Minilog will do the darkest, heaviest shit you'll hear. And you'll hear it in stuff like Virtue of Wrath. You'll hear it in Seraphicide. You'll hear it in God Does Not Dwell Here. um, innards, like a lot of the darker, like grungier sort of tracks that you hear there. That is the mini log doing that. Um, so I suppose, and the next thing I bought was the Korg Volca drum, and the best part about all of this is that I got this all on eBay when people were selling these. They're trying to just give them away because they're like, oh well, I'm done with my project. I can sell it and recoup the amount I spent on it. Oh, okay, I'll take it. I'll take it off your hands. I mean, the Minilog XD was about 110. The No, the Minilog XD was 600. I'm sorry. The Volca drum was 110, and the Volca what is it, the new bass, the Volca new bass was 130. And they are all unique and wonderful instruments that have all made an appearance on Trinity. And so I'm very much a Korg guy. I like Korg. And one first lesson I've ever learned is that you trust your instruments to put forward something that you want to do. You trust the instrument, and if the instrument isn't sounding the way you want it to, don't worry, because there are 5,638 different presets made by people, companies, and third parties that will find you a patch that will sound the way you want it to if you just look. That was just an arbitrary number. That's not the exact number. But there are bunches of people who still make patches for the drum, the new bass, and the mini log, and they all will just perform without much trouble. I mean, it's all about as simple as using your computer to add patches to your programmer, to your memory bank, and then off you go. So with that, the hardware stuff out of the way, well, not really out of the way, but it's kind of an overview of the hardware. I found myself trying to work really hard on building tracks that had a bit more depth. I'm really kind of learning how to build songs that don't just loop so much as they have a start, middle, and an end. And I'm still kind of working on that. I mean, but I do realize that there is a lot more consistency in my work now. When I started Trinity, it was kind of fishing at the bottom of the barrel for stuff of my own inspiration to find something. I think the first track I made was Grovel, which was just a remix of Grumble, which is on the concept album on YouTube if you haven't checked that out yet. That's a pretty decent track. But yeah, the first track I made was Grovel, and then Dynamo. Dynamo was not intended to be part of Trinity. It was just kind of me exploring sounds, but then Dynamo started picking up its own life, and then it just became its own sort of monster. And Dynamo kind of set the tone for how I wanted to do Trinity, at least in the terms of the way I wanted to present it. It was very much a sort of upbeat, in your face track. And let me put this on, see if I can replicate the notes. Something like that. It's, it's bouncing up and down, and but that is kind of a my hands are too loose. I've had too much of these ciders. Uh, this is not an admonishment of my playing skills. This is an admonishment of my imbibing of alcohol, by the way. Don't do that if you're just going to do a live performance. Speaking of which, we'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, as I was building up these tracks, I started focusing more on not just the basic concept of, what I wanted, what I've always wanted the Citadel soundtrack to sound like. You know, that was always the concept of how I wanted, you know, not just the song for A Martyr's Desire, but I wanted that to just be the theme. I wanted it to represent the entire hopelessness of that world. However, I realized quick that that gets old the more you put it into things. It gets old in a sense that you know it's coming, especially if you're the one writing it. You know it's coming, so it doesn't really get a very fresh impact. Now, for somebody who's listening, it might sound different. It might sound significantly different because, you know, they're not expecting it. But for me, the guy who makes the music, I find it to be very telling. So building these tracks, you know, and trying to figure out what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So it's very much I'm playing synths and I'm recording it on Audacity as I go, and I'm taking take after take after take, 30, 40, 50 takes for certain songs like Psychosis. Like I couldn't even recreate the piano line at the end of Psychosis if I wanted to. If you put a gun to my head and you told me I need you to recreate the last two phrases of Psychosis, I tell you just shoot me right now. Because I'm not going to do 75 takes to get that whole line of piano notes down again. Matter of fact, I think I'm pretty sure I segmented my playback 4 or 5 different takes to do the whole thing in one go. So technically, I never did it in one go. It was segmented and chopped up. But even then, keeping the tempo, um, it was difficult, and that was very much like the high point of the difficulties in recording. Not just that, but having restrictions like the M audio monitor that I have only has 3 ports, or is it 2? No, 3. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they have 3 ports, but only 2 of them for instruments. The third one is for headphones. So technically, it's not even. I can't even play all my instruments at once. So I have to stop when I'm done playing like a certain segment of a track. I have to unplug one synth to plug another one in. So I usually swap the Volca drum for the new bass, and then we'll go from there. But it added another layer of difficulty on top of cutting takes in Audacity and shortening up phrases so that I can get the piece that I want. Because when I was doing like some of the live streams earlier this year, I was very much uh, just playing and trying to find things that sounded good, like the song Trajan. Trajan was a live stream song that I put into the album, and you can see the process in that live stream of how long it took to actually get that phrase set up, especially in the middle part of it, for just a 2-minute song, a very short song. And it was very difficult to do that, for me at least, because I've never done it before. For a guy who's done this for 20 years as a hobby, he has never been put on the spot to make music on the fly. So it's very much a learning process as a hobby to learn how to do these recording sessions live and how to process these audio files, and to be deliberate in your actions to delete and modify things. Um, in that sense, it's very much a unique experience to get that done. Mastering also is one of those things that I have never done before. I've never done that before. So for me, it was very much a sort of conceptual theory of how do you put your song, your music into a program and then have it just be processed by its sound enveloper. I'm not very technical in the term, but frequencies. We're talking frequencies, right? Your highs and your lows, and you want them to sound the best as possible, or you want to try and, you know, make it so that you're trying to convey some sort of emotional concept. So I can tell you right now that, let me see if I can put this up on. Let me see, where is it? Let's see if I can pull up audio here, or at least one of my concepts. Like if I can pull it through FL Studio, that'd be great, because then I can point out exactly what I'm talking about. So it shouldn't take very long. I just got to find the project file. But yeah, mastering stuff is always interesting. Because for me, I've always been against the idea of mastering too much. Over mastering your stuff just sounds awful. If you push too hard into mastering all of your tracks to make them sound perfect, they're gonna sound like shit. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if this guy has had like fucking 40 years in the music business. I regret to inform individuals that if you try to push enough mastering and enough processes into your audio, you're going to wash it out with a bunch of bullshit. So I'm very hesitant about mastering stuff, because it makes the whole process, like, it just makes the whole thing sound dumpy, for lack of a better word. There we go. I'll just pull up Dynamo. How about that? If I pull up Dynamo, and then we can hear this. I'll turn it down a little bit. Like I said, this is all sort of on the fly, so. So what you hear in FL Studio is raw audio. It's unmastered. There's minimal filters that are not done through the DAW, and you are literally trying to like focus on, when you're mastering, focusing on the highs and lows. So right now you're listening to the drum, and you're hearing that long-tailed echo in that phrase. So see, that has good cutoff on it, and I'm thinking this is the drum. Yeah. So I guess we'll go ahead and break this down piece for piece, and I'm probably going to show the screen here too while I'm at it. Let me just make this a little smaller. Pull it under there, and then I will add this window capture. Okay, you guys tell me if you can see all that, but I'm going to transition right now, and you should be able to see it here in a second. Okay. Now, can we see it? Are we seeing it? Okay. Sweet. So when I do a project, I usually tend to start with a simple pattern, right? This is how I break down all of my songs. So this is how the process works. I start with a simple pattern, right? Let me change the octave on this. right? So simple. We're doing C, D, E, F, G. Yeah, so it's those are just two E keys on octaves. So that's the lower octave. So this is just two keys that are playing on an arpeggio. And all I'm doing is playing the lower notes to add, different contextual sort of energy to it. And I just repeat it twice. So it's very easy to get a sort of concept of how do I want this to feel when I'm doing it. Right? That's a lot of tension there. So I'm going to focus on the next part, the pattern 4. I'm going to skip over the drums now because I feel like that's kind of be like the last thing that ties it all together. But for pattern 4, we're talking about another arpeggio. So I'm a big fan of arpeggios, if you haven't noticed. For me, arpeggios are kind of like they help accentuate drums. Basically, arpeggios are great for helping drums. This is my favorite sound, by the way. Let me switch over. I love that whooshing sound on this pad. And the timing is where you have to really work on it. So you have to really work the timing on that when you're recording these pads. And of course they are layered, so they're sitting on an octave again. It adds a lot more oomph to it. There's a chorus there. And chorus is always, if you have a chorus, which is 2 or more voices, there's depth. So you have depth. And so you're playing through this. So adding those two together. Now you're using you're basically using a pad with a whooshing sound and arpeggio to basically tie in a pattern. These are patterns. This is the kind of pattern within a pattern concept that I like to do. Because not only do I have a pattern on Fruity Loops of these two instruments playing, I have a chorus here and I have an arpeggio. Chorus and pads and arpeggio. So now you have 3 voices, because you have to always consider that whatever you do to a pad is going to be considered part of the instrument. So if I'm adding chorus to something, it's going to add depth. If I add a flange to something, it's going to add distance and width. So if I add an arpeggio, I'm adding rhythm and syncopation. So it's always important to maintain that whatever you're doing, you try to keep it in time with your drums, which if you're doing the drums, they're pretty simple. Let me find the first pattern here. Here it is, the first pattern. All I'm doing is 16 notes on the cymbal, spaced out notes on the drum, on the kick, and they are at irregular time intervals. And then the last phrase basically resets the timer to get it back on time. So it's very, very much a drum beat that comes from the industrial sort of underground sort of thing. We're talking about like ideas of using kick drums, kick machines, drum machines that do not have a lot of articulation, but they are very good at what they do, which is providing oomph. And oomph is very powerful because oomph is very important in your songs. Having a bit of punch, right? Putting punch into your drums is the most important thing you can do to make it stand out. So if you're putting punch into something, it sounds robust. There's a depth there. Now you can always go naked. You can always go naked with your drum. There's not a problem with that. But if you're really looking for something to add some context or some flavor, it doesn't hurt to add a low pass filter to your drums to provide more texture, right? Because if you're adding a filter to something, you're trying to add texture. So adding texture to your music is very important with certain instruments. You don't put the whole thing behind a low pass filter and say, oh, well, that's good. You put the drums behind a low pass filter because you want there to be a barrier between what you're listening to and what the instrument is doing, because you want to add a darkness to it. There's a distance between what the drum is doing. You hear that? There's a filter there. There's a filter there because I don't want you to hear the whole drum. Matter of fact, I did edit this earlier, so I don't even have the filter on that one. There's the filter. And then you take the release knob and you turn it down a little bit and you have a good cutoff. So you can still hear the drums playing, but you have this wall. And this is a concept I thought of when I was doing the Citadel concept album, the first one, is I wanted the drums to be behind a wall, a filter basically, because I didn't want the drums to talk because I was restricting it. And that restriction is kind of the same emotional context that you have when you are snuffing out the idea of somebody having happiness. If you are putting a damper on somebody's day, there's not enough room to let that happiness release. It's contained inside. It's repressed. And repression is the most important thing you can do with industrial drums, is to choke the shit out of them. Because I hate drums. No, I don't hate drums, but it's important to do that. Now, when you add the snare to it, now you're adding another punch to it, right? There's a, left, right, setup, jab, left, right. And all of this is kind of just working together in the background. And yes, there's a filter there. It's blocking up, it's restricting, it's choking, because I want you to listen to the way that the pads are playing with each other, right? So let me find a pattern that actually has these pads playing. So I actually have to go to the arrangement. So I'm going to go ahead and take these off solo, and then I'm going to go find a part in the arrangement where you can actually hear this. So we're going to go to section 9 right here. And let's see, that's the right part. Yeah. So you're hearing all of the only thing you can hear from the drums is that cymbal in 16th notes, and that's just because that's oversaturation. But you hear the pads sitting in the back here up until the arpeggio comes in right here. So it's a crescendo, and now it's pushing the drums back further because now they're all fighting. And all this fighting internally adds harmony out of chaos. So this filter is basically restricting all of the energy that drum is issuing out with that punchiness. But at the same time, because I'm restricting the drum, I'm using arpeggios to add context to the drums and texture. So then, yeah, we hit the bridge here, the first bridge. Well, I would say it's a lead. It's a lead bridge to go into the main melody, which is and just that little snare. Just that snare changes the entire dynamic of the song, because now it's going from a very dark, repressed sort of energy of to having an arpeggio play and add context and texture to the drums. So now we add the snare, and now it's becoming itself. It is a new thing. That darkness and repression has turned it into something else. And normally that would be pretty good enough, right? That would be good enough. But I felt like, okay, yeah, so what's the melody? That's great. But what's the melody? What is a melody that we play? How about this one? That's two instruments put together. Using flex and a lot, and using more of the built-in instruments to build that. So you hear that sounds very, how do I put it? When I was putting this together, I like the way that sounded, because there's a chunky bass to it, because there's two instruments playing at the same time. So now you have a low sort of droning noise behind a saw that's playing on a higher register. And it reminded me of this old synth that I used to fuck around with when I was a kid from the 80s. It was a Yamaha. And I don't know how, I think I got it at a flea market a long time ago. And it just had the shittiest fucking like presets to it. But I loved the way the saw sounded on that thing, and this reminds me of it. So when I heard that, I felt like I needed to make it into something. I needed to reflect on the things I remember listening to in my youth, not just music on the radio or stuff I heard on the streets, but also just the things that were playing in my head. And I had a lot of inspiration going from ages 9 to 16. I was in a very weird headspace and trying to find myself. So I listened to a lot of music to try and understand who I was. None of the music really helped so much as it was an outlet for my emotion. And then I realized the outlet for my emotion was not in music, but it was making music. Making music was a far better catalyst for releasing pent-up frustration. So when I heard this saw, I felt compelled to make a second pattern of the same pattern, but on with a different saw, because I felt that was a nice way to add depth, right? And chorus adds depth. So I'm adding depth by putting these two together. So if I go, I tried putting them together at once and I realized they were clashing too much. I'll even show you pattern 5 and 6, right? So pattern 5, pattern 6, and I'll tell you what I'll show you what I mean. You hear that space in between them, where the synth of number 5 is fighting with number 6. So I'll do it this way. that pulsing sound is conflicting with both of these. So I couldn't put them together. So I kept them apart, even though they were playing the same notes. They had to be kept apart because it's too much of a. It's almost like a pseudo pressure wave playing in the ear. So I didn't want to make it sound unpleasant so much as I wanted to make it sound in context with how I was developing the song. So I decided I was going to do pattern 6 first. We do just... Which I like that sound a lot more because it's a lot more upbeat in something very dark and oppressive. But you notice right here, we started seeing this this pattern here, pattern 13. Pattern 13 is an interesting pattern. There's not much there, right? It's very much a filler, adding in emphasis to the empty spaces in between instruments. That's what that's there for. It's a drone with minor variations on the high register. We are talking about a pad that's literally there for noise. And if I disabled it completely, it changes the whole context of the song, right? There's no depth now. Where is that deep texture that we were getting at the first part of it? Wasn't there. Now we get that depth. So Dynamo is kind of one of those songs that I was learning about how to build patterns and how to build my arpeggios in a way that added more and didn't take away from itself. And I mean, it's still something I struggle with, but I feel like this was the best example. I also remember that the song ended about at 120 here. And so I needed to add another bit to it to kind of close it out. So I felt like the best idea was to put something like this. Oh, I don't want to record. Hold on. I wanted to stop it. No, that's not it. I remember doing this. It was like... Oh. Right? So, let me turn up the... There's a lot of echo there. So when I was writing it, I had to wait for the echo to go away so I could hear it. I was also extremely inebriated. This was a very hard part for me to learn because I don't ever fuck with these keys. So learning how to move with them and trying to set up that pattern while I was recording was kind of a complicated task. It's still complicated for me because I don't practice enough. I plan on changing that soon because I do want to eventually have a set list to play live, either this year or next year, but kind of just trying to get into the flow of things still. But yeah, I wanted to use this piano piece to kind of add, a nice closure. There's always a sense for closure in music. So I wanted to add closure. And closure is kind of an interesting concept because you can always have resolution with closure. But having a song that does not resolve has always been fascinating to me. Having things that don't resolve in life is pretty common. Life is full of things that never resolve until you're long dead. So having music that does the same thing is kind of powerful if you think about it. So I think this is a pretty... Hold on. Yeah. Oh, too low. That when I first got this chord down, when I got that chord down, that made sense from what I was doing before. I really wanted to incorporate these minor keys because they add so much more distress to what you're playing. And so putting these into a song was kind of a no-brainer once I figured out how to do it. This is what happens when you have a guy that has no formal education trying to learn music. So if it looks like a monkey plunking at keys, it's because that's what it is. Yeah. Musical choices tying into the atmosphere of the games. I'm sorry, I just saw that. But yeah. It really is one of those things. Is music is supposed to be a very important thing, right? But for a video game, music does not need to be the forefront of it. It should not be. The gameplay needs to be the first thing. So the music needs to be playing in the background, and it should not be so overwhelming that it takes the attention away from the player. The music should be there to provide emotional support to the gameplay, for lack of a better term. It is supporting it, but it's not taking the limelight. So to close out Dynamo, this pattern, which is just the same shit I've been doing. Pretty much that. And this is all, at the end of that project, it was very much just like, okay, how much more shit can I fill into the gap? It's like trying to throw as much as I could to make it sound impressive, right? Which in its sense, in itself, it's a very impressive sort of project because I've never done something like this before. So what does a guy like me do with projects like this? I have no idea. I've never done this before. Let me find my notes. Where was I? Mastering. So I said all that basically to tie back into mastering. Because mastering takes all of what I just did, it puts it through more filters. And if you already have filters on your music, it does not sound great. So you have to deliberately decide what instruments you want to put through filters to make them sound different. And I wish I had an example of what I was talking about, but if you take a patch in your DAW and you play that without any filters, and then you export it and put it through a mastering program like BX Mastering, which is free, and it saved my ass when it came to finishing up the album. Let me tell you. But if you put it through BX Mastering, there's always a hang-up, and the hang-up is that if you have no filters on that stuff, it's only going to sound louder. It's literally just loudener the application. So your filters do matter, but not in the sense that it's going to make a huge difference. Your filters are going to help depending on what filter you use, you're either restricting the decibel output or you're increasing it. So you're going to sound either louder or softer, and the louder you sound, as the adage goes, the louder you sound, the better you sound. Not true, but you're just making people deaf. But there's a bit of a nugget of truth there. Um, because if you play loud enough, you mask a lot of mistakes that you make in the process. So I guess. Uh-huh. Yeah. So doing stuff like that was kind of one of those things where I had never worked with a mastering program before, so I was really kind of feeling my way through it to get where I to get what I wanted out of it. And so let me just open up a new one. No, I don't want to save that. I already have it saved. So I'm going to pull this up again. Hold on. So I've been playing with new VSTs, so give me a second here while I pull up my piano again. There. Yep. All right. So while I was dealing with the whole mastering process, I was also learning how to use Audacity in a new way that I had not been using it before, which is music production, which Audacity is good at. It's good at for what it's worth, which is fucking free. It's absolutely worth using if you're really getting into the hobby. There's a learning curve, a bit of a learning curve, but if you know how to use Audacity, you can do about 90% of everything. Um, I've been using Audacity as far back as 2006, something like that. I've been using it for a long time. So I've watched it as it's come into its own and it's developed more and more and become far more robust as not just a free audio recording application, but honestly a fantastic recording application for a whole bunch of different things that I didn't realize I was doing. Um, so yeah, learning how to use Audacity by clipping audio and isolating audio and taking something that I liked out of a recording session and repeating it or turning it into something different. Especially with the song "Virtue of Wrath," which I hope I have a copy of "Virtue of Wrath" somewhere, but I don't believe I do. Let me see, what is this one? Skip, please. I don't update enough. Oh yeah, yeah. That's a good one. So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this FL Studio because I want to go to a different uh, window capture. There it goes. Remove that one. Add a new window capture. So then smaller. So here, this is Psalm 13 off of Trinity. So we're just going to talk about the 3 minutes that it takes before it actually kicks in. I wanted a track that was basically going to play in the background and illustrate what collapse sounds like, a person's mental collapse as it's just deflating, as they are becoming demoralized, as things get worse around them. It's the reason why I called it Psalm 13 is because Psalm 13 is literally just, what did I tell you? Psalm 13 is a very interesting song because it literally talks about requesting salvation from the enemies that pursue you, and they torment you, and the bad things in life that get you down. And it is a request of, how long must I wait, O Lord, while my enemies rebuke and shout at me? How long must I wait for your salvation? And I think everybody has a moment where they just ask, how long do I have to suffer before things get right? And for you and me, getting right is easy. Getting right is quite simple. But, you know, it Psalm 13 kind of plays into this really dark part of my mind. And it was literally one of those moments where I had a lot of difficulty uh, years ago, 10, 15 years ago. I had a lot of difficulty adjusting after a lot of big things happened in life. I had trouble adjusting, and I had trouble really just dealing with my stress and dealing with the world around me, as it seemed like it was getting worse and worse. So, I mean, when I talk about this, it's very much that's what the sound of that overburdened and compressing stress sounds like. And it goes on for about a minute, and then I start putting in a siren, Gabriel's trumpet. Reflectively, the trumpeters of the apocalypse. I think somewhere along the line I started realizing that suffering is kind of a universal language. Even if it's fictional, suffering is universal. So when you start to suffer, or you read about somebody suffering, you immediately, as a social creature, begin to relate to that. And then after a few minutes of that, it just gets to, we are pushing now. We're finding a direction and trying to move in spite of all the chaos around us. And you can hear that filter I was talking about with the drums. There's a filter there. It's choking the life out of the drums. It's refusing to let it sing while the synths are crushing down on you. And I have the volume turned down because when I originally recorded it, it was very loud. And I kind of want to be heard while I'm explaining these things because it's important, I feel, for people to kind of have that contextual understanding. And I think it's over here. Oh, it's right here. There it is. Yeah, that was it. I don't think there's really a scale that plays like that. But it also sounds very familiar. Very like European folk, right? Also very much like a psalm, right? So I think, and I've always felt that there's some sort of language being spoken that makes music become a human language, not just a cultural language, but a human language, one that transcends culture and countries and languages. And it's when you hit certain notes that people resonate very well. So, yeah, I think when I was making that, there was a transcendence of what I was putting into it and what I got out of it. I'm not really sure what it was, but I liked the way that it was sounding, and I just went with it. Um, I can assure you that this was a 20-minute session that I cut down to 6 minutes. So, I mean, I, for the sake of time, I felt like it was important to just kind of not do that, to not let people sit for 20 minutes wondering what the fuck is going on. It's not cool. Trinity, which one's that one? I have to open up these files now. So I'm going to close that. And then I'm going to bring that in. Oops. Can't open that way. This is what I'm talking about. The only downside with Audacity is if I want to open up another sample, I have to go through and find it and open it through a link. I can't just drag and drop. Like we're still in early mid 2000s sort of interface here. I like no shade intended, but we are talking about a concept that me pull up. Yes. Are we? Yeah, that is. I think that's ephemeral, if I'm not mistaken. Or yeah, this is one of the tracks I was talking about when it was talking about the Korg here. Really pushing the idea of how the Korg works. A wall of sound. A wall of sound designed to just oppress and constrict and prevent you from hearing anything else but that noise. And it's not so much that it's impossible to listen to. It's that it's unsettling, right? There's something that makes us desire the ability to breathe from an audio standpoint. And I refuse to let that happen. I think you should be smothered. So as it goes on, I think this was, yeah, this is actually just the whole fucking project here. So let me find another one here. Actually, let's close that. Really trying to find my projects here, and this is a one thing I needed to learn. I needed to learn to very much how to organize my shit. Yeah, you're my top guy. You're the guy I go to when I need a problem solved. So I suppose we could just put that away for a minute. And let me check that off my list. Mm. So I asked myself, and I think people would have asked as well, because I mean, it's an important question to ask, is why why would I do 50 tracks? Why 50? Why? 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 Yeah, fucking because 50 tracks gives somebody who is reviewing this music ample time and ample chances to find something that sticks. And no two songs sound particularly exact. They all sound different. They're all unique and they're all interesting. So, 50 tracks, I kind of just stuck to that because I felt like it was important to give that opportunity to Doi Kuramori to find something, right? It's like a menu, right? You pick the ones you like, you leave the rest. Whatever's left, I can fold into something else. And I think for me, it's also a chance for me to say I don't have to leave anything on the cutting room floor except for fragments and bits and pieces of things that didn't work. Like a song that doesn't fit, I'm just going to put it in there anyway because I feel like maybe it'll fit somewhere. I'm not the one making the game. I'm not the one making these artistic designs. I'm literally just trying to make something for somebody who honestly I have a lot of respect for, and I want them to succeed. So I'm going to make something that will make them succeed, or at least assist them in succeeding. I've never asked for a cent. If anything, I've said, it's all free. So I do 50 tracks because I want to give them enough of an opportunity to find something that they like. And that kind of, it's really great when I write something and I say, well, you know, I wrote this song because I felt like I was compelled by an unseen force to do it. I genuinely believe that. Like, that's not a bullshit explanation. I genuinely believe I was moved to do it. And I think this whole project about the Citadel has been nothing but a great exercise to help me develop as somebody who has always been afraid to take that extra step, to take the next step forward, and to finally just decide that, hey, I'm going to do it. I'm going to build something. I'm going to make something that's mine. And, that's what I want. I want to make something that is unique. I want to make something that will be remembered, not because I made it, but because it sounds good and it fits and it adds to the emotional depth of the project. For me, that's the most important part, is that it fits and that it works and that it helps convey the emotions that the developer wants. I've never asked for a penny from them because I don't feel it. I feel like that's beneath me. It's beneath me to ask them for money, even though that I came to them with music. Like, that seems unfair. If I'm the one offering something, I can't ask for money. It doesn't work that way. Like, in no cases do I give somebody a cup of sugar and then ask them to pay me $5 for the cup, right? It doesn't work that way. And so I will never ask them for a cent because that's the only right thing to do. And I think people have asked me in DMs and in private messages about, why don't you charge the money? How much did they pay you to do it? They didn't pay me a fucking cent, homie. They didn't pay me shit. I wanted it. I wanted to do it. That's what I wanted. That's two. And so I think moving on, the next part of that idea is emotional concepts, right? When we talk about what what the Citadel is, we talk about the emotional frustration of how to properly convey those things that Doi Kuramori is talking about and revealing. And I've I've been so happy to hear that reviewers have the ones that have noticed the music have realized that the music sounds so strangely out of place, and yet it conveys the emotion brilliantly. Yeah, I mean, not all of it was mine. A fair amount of that is, you know, from other copyright free guys, but I think I know. I think the developer knows what they're doing when they want to provide context, emotional context with music. But it's been refreshing to hear that they talk about it in a very positive manner, to say that, these disparate piano pieces and these pads and synths are, what's the word I'm looking for? Conveying the emotional darkness appropriately. That's it. So conveying that emotion properly in a piano is probably why I picked the piano, because it's so easy to convey that. Whatever darkness you have in your heart, you can always put it to a piano, even if you don't know how to play. If you feel around for keys for a little bit, you'll find something. And you find something that sounds good. Oops. That's, but that's what one of the reasons why I picked a piano as the basis for 90% of my songs is because the piano, it's considered a percussion instrument, hilariously enough, but the piano is very much a melody instrument as well. The piano can do things that other instruments cannot. Where an instrument is restricted by the amount of strings it has, or the amount of holes it has, or how tall it is, the piano can do it. The piano can do it. And a piano can do not just music and melody. It can do percussion if you attribute it to it, right? Like, for instance, if I opened up FL Studio and I decided I wanted to change my instrument from a piano to a fucking drum, I could do that. I could do drum. Right? I can do drum. Now I'm branching away from a piano to just doing a keyboard, right? A digital keyboard. But you're getting the point, right? Is that a piano not only can provide melody, it's also the instrument I use because I'm familiar with it, and I've only had a little bit of formal training with it, like maybe a semester of piano class. So enough to understand how it works, enough to understand the octaves and how the notes work in correspondence with each other, and how to make harmonies. Nothing so sophisticated as to learning theory or understanding all of these other higher concepts. As much as I would love to learn those, I think I'm a little over the hill for that. I could be wrong. I think I'm learning in different ways. Hello. So yeah, For me, I've always been captivated by the idea of using a piano or a keyboard in this instance to create music, because for me it's very familiar and it's easy to switch between between octaves, and to jump between bass and chorus and melody and treble and everything of this sort. It's easier to move between these different ideas and concepts and these different uh, setups. Like, I could do bass on a keyboard. I can do bass on a keyboard, but I'm getting carried away. The point I'm trying to make is that a lot of my music is designed to be played like this on a keyboard. It's designed to be played on a piano, not all at once, because that's impossible, because you have these things called layers. But I can rearrange 90% of my songs to be played on a piano if I wanted to make some sort of like acoustic album. But it takes away from the whole concept of what they were intended to be in the first place. Yeah, that's nice to hear Tinderbox played on a just on piano. It adds a different kind of context to it, which, if you haven't seen that, it's on my shorts page and on YouTube. I decided I wanted to try my hand at doing that. But going through the motions of making these 50 tracks, 55 actually, with bonus tracks. But like I showed through Dynamo, it's all a series of patterns being built up into this song, and everything starts as a pattern. It either starts as a drum loop, or it starts as a pad that builds onto it, or it starts as an arpeggio, and I work from there. Everything I do is a pattern, and I think in patterns. And the hardest thing to do when you're thinking in patterns is how to tie them together to make them sound good. Probably the hardest thing you can do is to genuinely build a pattern that works, so that you can actually develop a song out of patterns. Because I could bang on the drums all day, but if I don't have a pattern, it's not going to matter. So if I'm using tempo and I'm using time signature to build a pattern, I need to build something that will either complement that time signature and pattern, or that is so diametrically opposed that it becomes part of the pattern. So I'm trying to figure out, well, not figure out, but I'm trying to find one of my projects here that kind of conveys what I'm trying to explain. And I can't for the life of me find it. And I feel like this is one of those things I overlooked when I was putting everything together. I was too busy stressing about getting the stream set up that I did not look at what I was doing in terms of oh yeah, here we go. Let's go ahead and go back to Apotheosis in Code. Let me find Repose. Repose is such a wonderful song. Here we go. I don't really care about that. It's not that important. It's not important. I don't care. I'll just do that. Okay. So So yeah, Repose is an interesting song because Repose is an interesting song because of the fact that it has two patterns that play in opposite of each other. So we're talking about one instrument here, right? And the way this instrument was supposed to be set up is it was supposed to have a noise gate that was restricting the distance that this sound would travel. But that's basically what that first pattern is, and that just plays for that whole start of it. And then I think pattern 2. Let me bring back the FL Studio. And then switch back to that. So that's the drum set there, and that basically works as intended. What I liked about this was that I switched to these are not the same patterns. These are different patterns, but I'm using two different drum sets. One is a bit more analog and another one's a bit more digital. We're using more filters to try and add texture and depth. So as we go on, we start to see more and more of these different syncopations and patterns being built on top of each other. This is probably the most interesting part of it because this doesn't sound like anything, right? It's not supposed to sound like anything. It's a filler. And this is also one of the concepts I do with music is that I add filler. Filler, in terms of noise or percussion or bass or some sort of wave that just kind of does not allow empty space to sit in between notes. I feel like that's important for my compositions to add that white noise to help isolate your ears into listening to just one track. So this is used as white noise to block out all of the other noise outside. You put on headphones, you can actually hear it working. Did you hear how that worked? Watch that. Yeah, right? It doesn't seem like it should work like that, but that's how it works. it's a very, when it comes to like composition wise, it's not very robust in terms of how it's put together. It's very simple. Here's that noise canceling part. So you can hear that, right? The syncopation between two different patterns that don't sound the same. They are not working in tandem with each other, but somehow they are still working together. Especially right about here. So now you're hearing two drum layers on top of each other, plus that, there's these two drum layers here. If I just go by pattern. So this is all playing together now. And of course, this is also playing. So that plays through the whole. This part here, this section here, is probably where the concept of layering up, making opposites basically attract on purpose, forcing them to work together, and that itself is kind of important for me, especially because I love manipulating the way things sound. It's very much a core concept as well. Turning something into something else makes me happy. When it comes to music, at least. I don't really like doing it for anything else. Oh, jeez. Oh, it's opening. Hold on. I mean, it's either going to crash or it's going to open. There it goes. Now, hopefully, this is the right one. This could be the wrong project. And honestly, it'd be my fault. So, yeah, okay, disquiet. Not really looking at what's happening here. So let's pull that up. Why are you so loud, bro? These two should not be, these two notes are close together. I could technically do this. That shouldn't sound good. It's not supposed to sound good. That sounds okay. What if I did it on the other octave? Now we're getting to a harmonious end. I think when it comes to making piano pieces, especially if you're trying to make something convey a lot of pain or not suffering, but a lot of emotion, this concept of playing a note overlapping another note, almost like your fingers are sort of fudging on the key, which, I mean, to be fair, this keyboard does not do me any favors. Playing on a detuned piano, VST also doesn't help, but so you see the way these notes are lined up. Let's see if I can isolate these so you can actually hear that by itself. Let's do pattern 9. Now, naturally, I could always just do some sort of dumpy little, low octave sort of thing. I mean, naturally, the idea would be not that, but yeah. I refuse to allow it to go like that, though, because I want to add this tension, right? So instead of that, I'm doing. That doesn't sound nice at all. That sounds awful, really. Why would anybody play that? Well, if I play them soft, now we're not listening to the notes so much as we're listening to the atmosphere it's bringing. So now it's different. Now it sounds different. Now we're listening to something that's is not. It's basically taking the D key and stretching it out through the whole spectrum instead of having just a D sharp or a D. It's D, capital D, with, you know, a sharp modifier. But there it is, tension. Something that plays when you get stabbed in the back. You shift up an octave. That's where the main harmony in the bass comes from. Trying to make things that don't sound good when put together is a challenge. And I was very lucky that I knew I had an inkling of how I wanted it to sound. It's very much a song that doesn't play well with others, especially if you're not sure what you're doing. But it's very much an exercise in tension and volume control and finger placement. So I think move on to the next pattern here. I keep trying to push this as my control button. That's not it. That's the piano, not a keyboard. So we're basically doing this, just on a higher octave. Like this D is higher up. I don't have the width for that, so I also don't have, like, this is one of those things where I wish I had a fuller keyboard so I could play the whole thing. But that's basically what we're playing here. Now, if you watch TV, if you remember how Law and Order SVU sounded when they were doing like uncovering like plot twists and shit. Right? It's kind of the same idea. Is we're adding more tension, we're adding a lot more darkness. We're talking about a moment of unease, right? This is why it's called disquiet. It's a moment of unease where things don't seem right, they don't sit right, nothing we are doing is working. And yet there's a bit of light there that sits somewhere at the end. Because we know what we want. We know what we want out of life. We know what we want just from things in our our experience. We know what we like, and we know what we want out of life. So we resolve. But of course, resolution comes with, its own problem. Because nothing that you ever resolve ever stays resolved, because there's always something else happening in the background. That's why we get to here. So even with this tension, we are still holding out hope here. We still want something good to happen in our lives. So we are resolved to let this to find the ending here. I like that part too. This part, it's very subtle, even in the full recording. If you know where that's from, we can be friends. If you know where that's from, we can be friends. Let me see if I can find another one here. I'm not sure if this is the one I was thinking about, but yeah, okay. So this is the one. This was the one that came right after Magna Kinetic or before it, I think, uh in the concept album. Not sure if this showed up in. No, I don't think it showed up in Beyond Citadel. I kind of wish it did though, because I felt like this is one of those few tracks where I feel like I wish Doi Kurumura would have used it, but I understand why. Probably not enough impact. Just a simple arpeggio. And a simple arpeggio sets the whole tone for the song. Right? So what do we do with an arpeggio that needs arpeggio? Like I said, arpeggios help enhance a drum, right? So what does the drum sound like? Extremely choked. So I'm just going to turn this up a bit. So now we're basically letting the arpeggio do the drumming. Because we're following the arpeggio's tempo, right? The 16th note, right? We're following an arpeggio 16 note. So that's it. So that's all it is. It's just one note held down for an arpeggio. Pretty simple. So it's just that's the octave right there. It's just C. It's the C note. And then it goes down to A sharp. So of course we're letting the arpeggio play out because we want to set up the tension, the theme, the environment, the emotion, and we're also setting the way we want the drums to sound. Because we are choking the drum, we want the arpeggio to sound more like a drum. So now we're focusing on how this sounds together. It sounds good. So let's add a little bit of melody to open it up a bit. Kind of unsure. Taking steps for trying to figure out how we want to move from here. So we take another step. We open up a bit more. We were doing whole notes. Now we're doing half notes. Crescendo with a whole note. Half note, half note, half note. Quarter notes up on the high note. And now we're going 8th and 16th. So we're really letting the arpeggio do the talking here, while the melody in the background is playing on, kind of at the periphery. And we kind of bring it all together in now. We're going to build up, build up. This is just a slow build up here. Because what we're going to get to now is this breakdown of the arpeggio and the drum. We're going to open the drum up now. We're going to open it up, and here it comes. And this is just a simple pre-made pattern thrown into it. Like, there's not a lot of finesse there because I wanted to play with it. I wanted to play with just what does a regular pattern sound like when you're fucking with it, right? A regular pattern sounds kind of like this. Let me pick number 6 here, pattern 6. That's all it is. That I think it's an amen break if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's an amen break. That's all it is. It's an amen break, and I've decided I'm going to just play it out. I'm going to play it out. I'm going to break up the pattern into 2 quarter segments and then a half segment twice. And then, actually, no, I'm going to do that 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So I basically set up the pattern as, what is it? Yeah, so I'm playing that first part of the drums twice, and then I'm playing the whole pattern on the third go, basically making 4 steps. And then we bring back melody. And now we're just playing with the patterns that I made with these guys. I remember talking about how hard it was to make an organ. That is an organ. A very electronic organ. I'm not a big fan of... It sounds nicer on the higher registers. But that's one of those songs that didn't make it to the game. It's in the concept soundtrack for the Citadel. And it is probably another one of those interesting concepts where it basically reinforces the whole point. An arpeggio is meant to enhance drums. If you put your drums behind a filter, use an arpeggio, because you will find that the difference in quality is interesting. Oh, okay. I've had too much to drink. I gotta go. Hey, thanks, Jeffrey. I gotta go use the little moth bathroom. So I'll be right back. So you're gonna listen to this and be happy about it. You will listen to my album and you will be happy. Be right back. Don't go nowhere. I feel better. So I think while I was getting myself sorted about how arpeggios and drums get worked together and everything else, uh, I came across this realization that a lot of the stuff I make is very much rooted into the idea of electronic music in general. Like growing up, I listened to a lot of, house music and techno and acid and all sorts of crazy shit growing up. And so, it was also a lot of rap and funk and things like that. Growing up in a city, you get exposed to a whole bunch of different cultures and lots of different music. So you start to find things that you like to hear, and different drum patterns and melodic phrases that follow with, certain genres like techno and industrial, for example, all have what is that techno buildup. Very slow break. But if I went it up to dance music standards, right? 150 BPM, all of a sudden it's a techno track. I like techno, but I like deconstructing techno as well, because if you slow down a techno song, you start hearing interesting things. You start to hear interesting things in techno songs. Um, if you slowed down Robert Miles' Children to something a bit more uh, kind of what's the genre I'm looking for? You slow it down from techno to pop, right? So from 150 down to like 110, 120, you start hearing a lot of interesting things. I'm not going to play it because I'll get copyright striked, but if you go on YouTube and you listen to that song, slow down the tempo. You can do that by changing the timer, the time multiplication down to like not half, maybe 0.75. But if you just put it in that sweet spot, you'll start hearing a lot of interesting phrase changes and atmospheric sort of interference between instruments as they play. And it's very interesting to hear how these analog synths used to play back in the day. And I really like emulating the concept of analog synths. So much so that I bought actual analog synths to be put into Trinity. So clearly there's something subconsciously going on in the back of my mind that makes me want to recreate this feeling I had sitting in the back seat of a car at 9 p.m. on the US-Mexico bridge listening to techno so my mom can hurry home to go get changed to go out to the club and leave me as a latchkey kid. Thanks, Mom. You really helped inspire me. um, let's see. Try to see if there's any other tracks here. Oh, how could I have forgotten this one? Blood, blood firmware, blood firmware. That is a track that really kind of plays on that concept of pop music, techno, house music sort of thing. I'm going to turn this down because it is kind of a loud song. Right, it's a very common techno phrase. It's just a simple chord. Very simple phrase. Hello, Amal Joe. It's good to see everybody here. It's great. I'm very happy to see you all. I'm just going over the whole concept of when I was growing up listening to techno and house music, and I a lot of my music is a deconstruction of those genres. Um, it is electronic, it is experimental, it is ambient, and it's got a whole bunch of other influences to it, like Nine Inch Nails and Kraftwerk and Fear Factory, but a very industrial sort of spin on a techno song because techno's usually upbeat because you're all taking drugs and all you really want is for the drum beat to keep going so you keep dancing. And I'm really trying to get you to stop dancing. You're terrible at it. So it's kind of what I was doing with this. Let me see if I can find that other pattern. Yeah, pattern 9. I think that's just yeah, that is a techno. So yeah, that's that. And I decided I was going to throw that in there because it it is a techno sound. If I had more control over this, I would have actually added 2 kicks and then a snare at the end of that phrase. But, unfortunately, when you're working with pre-made patterns, you can only do so much. And I'm moving away from pre-made patterns as I've been going on. Like a lot of the concept album had a lot of pre-made patterns. Uh, Apotheosis had some pre-made patterns, and Trinity still has a few, but that's also like from projects that were meant for other things that worked into Trinity and Beyond Citadel. Yeah, actually, Jesper Kid is probably one of my big influences, and a lot of my time was playing Freedom Fighters. Um, I mean, let me find an actual. Yeah, see, I knew I had one of those. I'm very very big fan of Jesper Kid and that particular aspect of his of his body of work because there's a lot of dystopic and dark elements into that song because he's really trying to convey the idea that what you're seeing on in game is a reality that could have been real at some point but never happened, and it's good that it stays in the realm of fiction. It's also why I like his Dark Tide. His Dark Tide soundtrack is also fantastic. Um, yes, Jesper Kid is a big influence. I'm actually revisiting Jesper Kid's work for another project that I'm working on right now. Um, that I can't get into because it's uh, well, it's just out of respect for the developer of that game. Um, Honestly, when he's ready to announce it, I will talk more about it. But at this point, I'm not going to get into details. Don't write Assassin's Creed like that. That just sounds like Gachi Muchi. All right, ass Creed. Well, Billy Harrington is Ezio Auditore. All right. That's also very very interesting phrase. If you know where it's from, we can be friends. Again, we can, we can be friends. Let me. Okay, I'll give you a hint. There you go. There's your hint. There's your hint. That's how you know I'm an old man, because I can still refer to that musical phrase. But yeah, I was gonna say this track itself is an older track. It was an older track that got into Trinity because I reworked it again. This is one of those another common element that comes to my music is I'll make a whole bunch of fucking bullshit. I'll come back later, a couple years down the road, and I'll be like, oh hey, look, a piece of shit. Let me polish it. And I'll polish something up and it'll actually come down to something decent. And I think this is one of those tracks I had a lot of trouble with because what I was trying to convey, I did not have the ability to. And even with all of the shit that I put into this to make it worthwhile. What is that? Track 5? I'm trying to remember which one it is. This is my best approximation of a guitar, by the way. Sounding by itself, it sounds awful. Yes. Yes, I did play the Die Hard trilogy on PS1. Again, another inspiration. Because I know what you're thinking. Is it that octave? I also have to remove one. That's it. Yeah. It's a wonderful day at the airport. Yeah, that is basically the approximation of a guitar. And I think I have, yeah, it's a bass and power chords. So turn down the power chords and you can. Yeah, I am very much a 90s kid, Jeffrey, like hard. I grew up in 1990. You know, I was born in 1990, grew up through the 90s and the early 2000s. All of that, like I was in that weird transitionary phase where everything was starting to move online. So, like, I grew up with a lot of analog stuff and then transitioned to digital. And it's very telling what year you can really tell when what year people were born in. So yeah, I have to keep the notes choppy on this power chord guitar. Oh God, what is that? What's that song? Was it WCW versus the World? Trying to remember how that one went. Hold on. Yeah, yeah, basically. And I am subbed to Ahoy. Yeah, I'm subbed to him. So you're reading me like an open book here, Jeffrey. You got to stop. Yeah, that's just a basic drum fill that you can put through the whole song. I'm just gonna play a minute or two of this, and I'll just show you how it all comes together because it all. I'm not very happy with this track. I never was when I put it together, but I felt like I wanted to finish it. I wanted to finish it because I felt like I had it sitting on my desktop for years, and it is one of those tracks where it's like if I had better skills at making this music, I could actually make a banger, but I'm going to make something that just kind of sits there and collects dust. So I need to get it out of here. So yeah, I mean, let me put my big cup aside. Anyway, this came out okay. I mean, like I'm not discouraged at how it came out. I'm just kind of discouraged it took so long to get to that point. They, but this track was also one of those inspirations that came from, uh, gosh, which Gundam was it? War in the Pocket. I think it was '83 War in the Pocket, and it was when Xeon attacked that Arctic base, and that fucking track was playing in the background, and I just wanted to try and like emulate that sort of emotion. Uh, I don't I don't remember where exactly it's from, but that's where I remember it, hearing that inspiration from, the direct inspiration. Um, is that scene? Let's see. Oh, I don't know if this is correct or not. I don't know if this is the right file. This is what happens when you don't organize your bullshit. your stupid project files and you just have them all in a folder, unsorted, you start to realize that all the stuff you're doing could potentially just be awful. Yes, that's it. I keep coming back to this. I keep coming back to this track. I keep coming back to this track, no matter how many times I try to like avoid returning to the same themes. Yeah, I don't need to organize these files. This is going to be a throwaway. And all of a sudden, no, the file that you thought that you were going to get rid of when you were done with this has apparently just become part of the project, and now it's going to stick around for a while. So kudos on you for leaving it in a folder unorganized. You're going to have fun finding it 6 months from now. I remember when I first started making music for the Citadel, this was one of those songs that it really should have just been a throwaway. It did not. It was again, this is what I wanted the whole theme of the Citadel to be, but I also wanted to feel like, I also felt like it was not doing enough to provide the right amount of energy to the main character. Those are the main chords I started with, and then I wanted to break it down a bit more. Yep, and I was just kind of fumbling through it. And I can't hit that higher note up here because that does not fucking exist on this keyboard. So, da 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 da. Yep, da 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 da. And I think where that came from was staring at one of Doya Kuramori's pictures of the martyr. And I wonder if I can find it, if I still have it. I think I do. I think I've got it somewhere. I just gotta pull it up. Main screen turn on. Yeah, we've got signal. Let me add an image. Yes, image. Find it. Give me a second. I'll pull it up. Yeah, that one. That was the picture I was looking at. And I watched it for a few minutes and then started with the eyes. Why? One is open, One's covered. It's that look in her eyes, I think, that really gets me. I'm very much a person that looks at the eyes, right? So I'm see if I can get closer on her eye. Yeah. We just look closer at her eye. Yeah, start with the eyes. I always look at characters with the eyes. I know what you're thinking, and it's very easy to think that. So that's kind of what I was doing. I was just going up and down the keys, looking at this picture. I wasn't looking at my hands. Just no, it's very dirty. There's something behind those eyes that there's an innocence, right? There's a purity there, but it's hidden away and it's masked behind trauma. As we've all learned, it's a severe case of trauma. And you just stare at that long enough and you start to realize there's a lot of hurt there. A dead dove, basically. That's what she is. Well, you you're not gonna find this lady in a kids anime, not in a Christian manga. Look, I was around when all that weird fucking millennial satanic panic was going around. That shit was crazy. Yeah, millennial don't make a story about trauma challenge. Yeah. I'm sorry. We lived through a whole fucking a thing, right? We lived through a whole fucking crash. They don't want to call it a crash. That's what they called it. You know, they call it something else. I don't care what they call it. It was awful. Anyway, that's kind of what I was up to when I was doing that. Having to just stare at that picture long enough and not looking at the keys when I was playing it, I came up with oops. And that was kind of how it started. It started that. I think it's interesting how that came about because I really don't know what inspired me to just pursue that process of just playing those notes. But I was very happy I did. I was very happy that it came out as it did because there's no way I could have figured that by myself. I don't know. This is okay. So I suppose I should explain that. So, the very first track that came from that note was A Martyr's Choice, which is what plays in the secret chamber in Beyond Citadel. That's actually the very first iteration of the Martyr's theme. And then A Martyr's Desire, which is what played in the trailer, uh, is, let me pull that up, is actually what's on here on my my FL Studio project. We'll just adjust some things here and I'll pull it up for you. There. Just adjust that a little bit more. So, A Love Unspoken happened after A Martyr's Desire. And that was me basically trying to build an entire theme. And honestly, it's one of those tracks I want to go back and redo. I want to redo it with a vocalist, and I want to redo it with a proper pianist, and actually make it a professional sort of production. If there's anything I want to do, that out of anything that I do, I want to make a legitimately professional reissue of that song. I don't care if I don't do anything else with my life. If that's the only thing I can do, I'd be happy with it, because I feel like that is a legacy track that is going to stay with fans, even though it's not in any sort of official media. It's one of those interesting things where a song meant to convey the emotions that you were feeling while you were writing a song that ended up in a game is the fan favorite. You guys are weird. But yeah, I think I keep coming back to this track, this melody. I keep coming back to this stupid melody. It's not stupid, but for me, somebody who has hashed over this theme over and over again, I have a love-hate relationship with it. I'm starting to develop one, at least, because for me, it's coming to be, it's turning into this whole what came first, chicken or egg. But yeah, I guess we could start with the first pattern number 3. We'll start with that. That is an arpeggio. So we are just putting 3 notes together in a chord on an arpeggio. So it has to play all 3 notes together. Let me pull that up. So yeah, we're playing very low on a register here. So we're doing. Yeah, we're kind of. That is also the theme. So. And then we go to the next pattern, I think is this one. So I tend to cheat. I tend to cheat a lot when I make music, because I can very easily, switch a piano from. I could switch from a piano to another one. This is what I was talking about when I was saying I like using keyboards, because I can make a pattern with the piano and then go back and put a synth in it, and then it sounds different. Because if I just did a basic piano, then it sounds different. If you haven't listened to A Martyr's Choice, this is just A Martyr's Choice, and it's just basically we're deconstructing the song itself. Basically, is what we're doing. We're deconstructing it to a point where we are turning it into something else. And A Martyr's Desire was kind of like I needed something that conveyed the anger that I also saw in her in the martyr's expression from that picture we looked at earlier, because that's what it is. It's sadness, it's purity, it's it's innocence, and there's anger there, and it's all mixed together into this really weird emotion if you look into her eyes. And a lot of people think it's like a weird sort of like fuck me eyes. No, that's something that's crazy. You don't mess with crazy. She's crazy. You don't mess with crazy. I want to slow this down a bit because this is how I started the drum beat when I first programmed it. I think it's just if I'm not mistaken, it's a reggae beat. Yeah, it's a reggae beat. So at 80 BPM, you can tell it's a reggae beat. But if we pick up the pace and we do 110, I think it was. You get more of sort of like a Marshall sort of groove with it. So you're, it's not 120. Yeah, Love Unspoken leaves the biggest mark because it actually conveys lyrics. I don't do a lot of lyric writing, and I don't like lyrics. I feel like if I'm writing lyrics, it's because I have something important to say. Most of my music likes to stand on, like, I like my music to stand on its own. If I add, I feel like lyrics kind of cheapens the whole impact music has. Now, that's not to say that lyrics are I should never put lyrics into anything, but that's my theory is if I'm putting lyrics into something, I have to mean it. And I feel like a lot of people just want to hear lyrics because they want to be told that what they're feeling is right. I think you should trust yourself to know what you're feeling. Like, I trust you as a listener to know what you're feeling when you're feeling those feels with the music. So when I write something with lyrics, it's because I want you to understand that I feel them too. You're not alone in that. Yeah. Well, exactly. That's a very much a jazz thing. Shout out Cowboy Bebop. And then this is the second pattern for the drums, which is we are getting into a Marshall beat. We're just playing that again. I think we're doing cello and strings here. Yes. Yeah, I see that dyslexia kicking in right there. There is so much that I want to say about the way these strings present themselves, and none of it is good. Let me go back to this and actually let's change the way it sounds. Actually, I want to. change, you could change the instruments to however you want, but there's only one instrument that's going to sound right in that context, right? So it really doesn't change anything. It's just the delivery of how it sounds is what matters the most for me. And there's only one way you convey the emotions you want, and that's by using the right instrument. You could play the same song on a xylophone, but you're not going to get the same emotion. You will never get the same emotion. There's something specific about that. Okay, what was I going to check on my notes here? I have like 2 more notes. Okay. So yeah, I was talking about limitations. So let me just pull my fucking suspenders and wake my ass up. The difficulties in making music usually has to do with your personal attributes and your the difficulty that comes with just having the motivation to do it, right? It's like trying to work out. You don't have the motivation to work out, you ain't gonna work out. I don't really care what anybody says. Somebody says, "Oh, fuck that! Wake up and go work out anyway." You can have a shitty workout. You're just gonna it's gonna be a bit of a wash. Yeah, you're gonna be active and you're gonna get something done, but I've always been of the opinion that I don't force it when it comes to music. I'm very much a let it be sort of individual. If it comes, it comes, and when it hits, I start to work on it. I only work on it as long as I need to. If the inspiration leaves me to go work on something else, I'll save the project and move on. Sometimes I won't come back to it. Sometimes I'll come back to it months or years later. That's just how it works for me. That also kind of contributes to my shitty save system, but we're really just kind of, it's neither here nor there. That's a personal limitation I'm willing to accept because, for me, making music is kind of an interesting hobby of mine because I don't do it in the sense of like, oh, I want to play in a band and I want to be a fucking rock star. No, it's not what I want to do at all. I like working alone, but I like working in the company of other people. I'm very much a temperamental sort of guy. If I like the vibe of somebody I work with, then I'll work with them. Yeah, FL Studio is one of those things that the learning curve is really high, deceptively high. Especially when you start talking about mastering and levels and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't really, it's not very straightforward in how you're supposed to do it. So, of course, that's also a limitation for me because I had to learn how to do that while making Trinity. And making Trinity was a fucking exercise in futility in terms of like how to master your levels. So much so that I had to go get an external third-party mastering program to help master the tracks for the album release. It doesn't take away from the experience, but I noticed when I was converting all the audio into a video, I was not having a lot of don't start, Jeffrey. Don't start. No, we're not engaging this topic of conversation. We're not engaging that topic of conversation. I know what I'm doing. I'm a licensed professional. I pay taxes. God help us all. I vote. But yeah, working on that sort of context of working alone, working with people, or collaborating with other musicians, like I did with Dark Strike on Synthetic Authority, which I mean you can find on my YouTube channel. That's That was my iteration of a song he made called Executive that I helped him write. I like that guy. I hope he and I can collaborate again in the future. Thoroughly enjoyed working with him because I think we were just on the same wavelength that time. Um, Other than that, though, I don't. A lot of people that I've met who are also musicians are very much about their business and not in a good way. They're very much about themselves and not very interested in the finer points of music creation. Whereas, if it was up to me and I had unlimited budget and unlimited time, I'd go buy a studio apartment in town. I'd black out all the windows and I would live there for 6 months and just focus on that. Focus on making music in the dark, away from people. I would never go out. That's that's an ideal project for me. Is isolating myself completely from humanity so I can create something that is cerebral and internal and dark. And unfortunately, the limitations of financial compensation and mental health prevent me from doing this. Not the mental health so much as it is the financial. Yeah, I would be a hermit. I would love being a hermit. I think when I'm older, I will be a hermit, and I'll be very happy for it. I, I yeah, it's like method acting. I just want to be alone to work on my music, and whenever that comes, it will show up and it will inspire me, and we will make music. And then when I'm done, it's like a one night stand. It's over until the next time it happens. Again, this is all sort of like parts of the difficulties that happen when you're making music. Um, I think contextually speaking, software and hardware is also kind of important to take into consideration because 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 programs cost money. Programs cost money. Licensing costs money. Distribution software costs money. Hardware, analog synths, MIDI timers cost money, and they don't cost cheap. They cost money, they cost time, and they cost energy. Half the problems I have is because I ain't got enough fucking money. That being said, I'm not asking for money. I just wanted to bitch about it. I wanted to bitch about the fact that people need to make money because we live in a society. Put my Joker paint on. We live in a society, and societies just kind of money can be traded for goods and services. Quote Homer Simpson. We just kind of have to deal with that. That's just the way it is. It's always like that. It's been like that since, I don't know, for 10,000 years. Money can be traded for goods and services. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Star Wars. Yeah, I know that. Very funny. I don't think I don't think it meant what they thought it meant. I don't think it meant that when they were trying to create that sort of like space sort of music. The Cantina song is burned into my brain, and even more so what genre it is. Anyway, difficulties as well. Another difficulty I came across was I honestly trying to get everything started up, like getting the album started, getting all the music put together, mastering it, getting it all put together, organizing the tracks in a way that sounds cohesively. Um, that was all a learning experience as well. Instead of just throwing tracks in as they came, I was organizing them in terms of how they tied into each other. Um, and I think it came out okay. I think the next time I do it, I really want to try and work more on thematic elements and tying things up thematically. It will be a difficult process. It always is. But I also believe that taking risks is kind of important. So I'm more than willing to give it a shot. I think in any hobby, that you do. It's important to push the envelope because you don't know what you get out of something if you don't push yourself, right? Even if it's a hobby, something that you don't even do for anybody's benefit but your own. Like you build model kits, dude, build a giant diorama. Build a whole battle scene. Why not? Because you can. You can just do things. Like that's the best lesson I've ever heard from somebody. You can just do things. Some things you can do exactly once and then you fucking die, but you can do things. It doesn't stop people from doing things. I think if you do things, you learn how to do them well after a moment or two. Like I've learned more about music production and mastering and composition with Trinity than I did in any other sort of concept. Like with any other project I've ever done. I feel more confident going into my next project now than I did when I was asked to do it. Back in September, October. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. Is I have learned a lot from that. And I've learned about marketing. I've learned about taxes and sales and shipping logistics and customs forms. I've learned so much about all of these things on how to basically start a business because I have officially gone into business as a musician, as a hobbyist. I will not be making enough money to break even this year. I won't be making enough money to break even ever. That's okay. But, eventually the tax man's going to look at me and be like, hey, you can just stop reporting your taxes as a businessman. We're not going to count it anymore. Because I won't be making enough money. But I also feel like I want to take off the expenses that I've made for this whole project. So I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm going to go into business as a musician. So that's kind of the big deal. I'm going into business as a musician, self-proprietor. And honestly, that's kind of what the USB sales have been for. Is just kind of like trying to build up this financing to kind of move on in this hobby, to build up to another part of my journey, which the next part of my journey is to learn how to do live sequencing to make music to be played back live so I can go do concerts. I still have to report my expenses. That's the downside. And I have spent hold on, where's my I had my calculations here. I had my taxes all figured out, or my deductions figured out, because I had all of it listed. It's somewhere in the ballpark of, I shouldn't say this out loud. I have probably spent about $2,000 just for a hobby. It's too late. It's too late. They'll find out anyway. They're going to find out. And we're all going to the big house. No, but yeah, I've spent a good $2,000 on this hobby alone. I will be deducting these expenses for tax purposes, but it also depends on the fact that, yeah, I know people who have spent far more on their fucking hobbies. Some stupid shit, stupid amounts of money. I think I spent stupid amounts of money. But comparatively to some of the dudes I know who they go to the track out here in Waterloo and race, they drive race cars. They have put thousands of dollars into building race cars. and customizing engines and timing chains and all this. It's so bad how some people just burn money like that. And I feel, and here I am talking shit about myself for spending $2,000 on something that makes me happy. It's funny how that shit happens. But yeah, I don't want to talk your ear off anymore. I've been here long enough. I started at 6. I feel like 9 o'clock is a good ending time. Um, yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming out to sit here, listen to me talk for 2 hours about how my process worked. And I mean, I really appreciate everything you guys have done for me, just supporting me, the music I post, buying. If you bought an album, if you've shared it, links to my stuff, or if you talked about it, the music I've made, or if you've ever just even watched a video and commented, every little thing. Yes, gambling is a great hobby. Thanks, Jeffrey. But every little thing you all have done is just, it's meant so much to me, and I can't thank you enough for it. Like, this year has been wonderful in terms of my hobby, and in terms of meeting new people and learning new perspectives about the hobby, and meeting fucking fantastic musicians and learning about things. I mean, gosh, I don't know. I'm just very thankful. I appreciate everything you guys have done for me. So thank you very much. I I guess I should just finish up by plugging things right now. I still have a few USB albums left. I will send them out as soon as I'm able to. I do apologize for some of you who have been waiting. I just got packages mailed out this afternoon. The holidays are kind of shit. I appreciate that, Blackout. Thank you. But yeah, holidays are kind of shit when it comes to shipping things out. I mean, and finances this year have been tight for everybody. So I don't expect a lot. And I know I ask a lot by putting my prices where they are. But, the fact that some of you have actually compensated me as handsomely as you have for things that it really just baffles me to no end. I would make CDs if I had enough space on the CD to put all of my music on. That's kind of where I'm at with that. That's why I did USBs, is because USB has better storage capacity, and you actually hold the files. They are yours to keep on a physical storage, device. If you want to take them and burn them onto a CD, you have my full permission. Okay, that comes from me. If you want to, use them in your projects, go ahead. I have no qualms about people using my stuff in projects, just as long as you credit me. That's always been my spiel. Is if you're going to use it, just credit me. That's all I ask for. But yeah, I had not expected the amount of support I've received in the past 2 years since starting this. And it means a lot to me to see how many people really just enjoy music, even something as silly as what I do. So thank you all. Gosh, I don't know. I guess New Year's is coming, so I wish you all a happy New Year, and I hope next year for you brings great things, because I hope it brings great things for me too. So thank you again, and I hope you all have a good night.